Welcome to today's webinar, Winning Strategies for the 2017 $81.5 billion Federal Technology Marketplace. I'm your moderator and host, James Baker. For those of you that don't know me, I reside in Northern California and I'm a consultant to technology companies that sell into the federal, state, local, and education marketplaces. I also authored the book, How to Win Business from the Government. Additionally, I run a forum that features government leaders from all over the countries where we talk about the issues of technology, government, and education. You can learn more about me online. I'm pleased to have joining me today Dr. Robert Polster. Rob, could you kindly give our audience a little bit of your background?
Sure, Jimmy. Glad to do it. Yeah, for those of you who don't know me, I'm a veteran of the federal systems integration community. But my background originally was operations research, and so I've really always been a problem solver. And so in the last several years, my focus has been on the business development arena. And I've identified a number of problems that most business developers confront. And I've developed a set of solutions, a process called the impact business development process for addressing it. And that's what you're going to be hearing about today.
Thanks a lot, Rob. Before we get started, there are a few housekeeping items I'd like to go over with everyone joining us nationally. And by the way, let me say thank you. We have an incredible lineup of people from business development, capture management, proposal, marketing, and sales joining us. We're going to send you a copy of today's slides. We're also going to send you a link to watch this on YouTube. Please submit your questions via the dashboard feature with GoToWebinar. We'd like to get a chance to answer all of them during our webinar today. The agenda for today is this. We're going to look at some of the questions that you've had coming in. It's really important when I personally attend a webinar. I usually have one or two key things that I want to learn from the event, and we're going to make sure that you have your takeaways taken care of. Rob and I are going to talk about a 9-step business development process called Impact BD. Today we can only show you 3 steps, and then we're going to go through your questions, and then we have some special offers at the end of this. For those of you listening in today, if you haven't had a chance to read my book, How to Win Business from the Government, I have a special offer for you. You can read that on your screen. Rob also has an Impact BD paper. I encourage everyone listening to download that online. If you'd like to get in touch with Rob or myself outside of this webinar, there's our information. So I want to talk about your takeaways. When I teach classes around the country, one of the first things I ask people is, what do you want to get out of this course? What's important to you? Over the last 10 days, we've had a multitude of questions come in through registration, and we've kind of categorized them into 4 areas that we think people want to learn more about. How to overcome a lack of past performance. Boy, I've had to do that. What if you don't have relationships with government executives? We'll talk about that. We're going to talk about the best source of bid opportunity intelligence. We're going to really get into how to differentiate your company, because I think that's one of the big walkaways you're going to talk about. A lot of people, they saw our presentation and they go, what are you talking about DME funding? What is it? And we're going to answer that. I'd like to go ahead and talk about the Impact BD process. Rob's going to go through a little bit of detail, and we're going to really look into intelligence, messaging, and connections. Rob, could you go through a little bit about Impact BD for our folks listening around the country?
Absolutely. Glad to do it. Okay, well, what Impact BD is really all about is to help you to stop just responding to RFPs and instead to actively shape those RFPs. Now, that may not seem like an easy thing to do, and it is not an easy thing to do, but this is what Impact BD is all about. It helps you to do that. Here's what you need in order to shape an RFP. First of all, you have to have identified a customer with a real problem and a real budget. You don't want to be chasing opportunities that don't have any budget associated with them. You need time to shape the RFP. If you've already received the RFP, it's too late to be trying to shape it. So you need advance information. You need to have an understanding of what the customer's problem is, and then you have to have insight that you can bring to the customer that will be instrumental in shaping that RFP. And then finally, you have to be able to get an appointment with that government executive. So what Impact BD is all about is it provides you with the tools and the ability to acquire everything that you need in order to shape an RFP. In addition, it helps you to differentiate yourself. Instead of being one of many companies having similar skills, you will be able to describe yourself in a way that makes you stand apart from the pack and really differentiate yourself. Now, Impact BD has 9 steps to it. We're not going to have time today to go through all the 9 steps, but what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the first 3 steps, and in subsequent webinars we will go through the remaining steps. So at this point I'm going to turn it over to Jimmy. He's going to talk about the first step in the Impact BD process.
Thanks, Rob. Hey, for everyone listening in, your questions are important. We're going to buckle up and we're going to go, it's going to seem like we go from first gear to sixth gear. I like fast cars. And we're going to move really quick through this. We only have an hour. And many times when I'm doing training seminars around the country, they're 3 hours long. And a lot of the topics we're going to talk about today require far more detail than the time that we have. So ask your questions. If I don't get to it in the presentation, we'll touch base outside of it. One of the questions that I get all the time when I'm speaking is, hey Baker, how do you find low-hanging fruit? Well, I got a news flash for everyone. There is not low-hanging fruit. There is only smart-hanging fruit. And I'm going to teach you a technique and a strategy of how to get that, how you can be smarter than your competition, how you can penetrate government in different ways. So one of the first things that you've got to begin to consider is who you're going to go after. When I got in this business 25 years ago, I worked for a gentleman named Steve Baldwin. I remember he pulled me aside and he said, Jim, you can only go after 1 or 2 agencies. They all have money, and you got to know them really well. And so that's kind of one of the premises that we like to look at when we go after a target agency. I want you all to know, outside of writing a book and consulting, I do a lot of work with my clients where I roll up my sleeves and I do the calls, I help them with meetings. So I'm not a detached consultant from this. I'm in the mud right with you all, moving through the process, and it's hard, but if you do it right, you'll have a different return on investment when you go after this market. Let me give you an example. Let's say you wanted to go after the Department of Justice. Department of Justice is a behemoth legal organization in our country. And what you have to understand, you're just not going to call on Department of Justice and have a blanket strategy for DOJ. Let's take a closer look. You can read the details on your screen about it. 118,000 employees. It's massive, huge technology budget. Look at some of these organizations here that serve our nation. And so I think there are over 45 to 60 different organizations. But at the end of the day, you may have to have a strategy to go into each office. But where do you begin? How do you get started? So we're getting ready to wind down the end of one government year here on September 30th, and October 1st is coming. Your management, your executives should have in place for you a go-to-market strategy of how to go after this business. So the first place that you want to do is go out to the IT dashboard and download a copy of the President's Report on IT Spending. This is a behemoth Microsoft Excel folder, and it's going to show you a couple of different things about how the government's spending money. It'll look like this when you come into it. What I want you to know, I spend a great deal of time in my consulting practice doing budget analysis for clients and looking at the budget. There are over 7,400 budget line items. I looked at a lot of the opportunities that are 10 million and above, and look what the government's buying. I will tell you this, I work across the board in federal, state, local, and education, K through 12 and higher ed. The question that is out there right now in the marketplace, everything is about security and privacy in the cloud. And almost all the discussions I have are really centric around that. But you can see, from modernization to financial management to telecom. These are words right out of the budget. These are all opportunities that are funded at $10 million and more. So what kind of opportunities do you look at? This is what I suggest to you doing. When the webinar is over, we'll send you a recording, and when you listen to this again, pause here, and I want you to make a list of what your company does. Rob and I actually work together. I'm here in Northern California. Rob's in Bethesda, Maryland, and we work together quite a bit with different clients. And we recently did a job for a company where they were going after a target agency, and they gave us about 20 words that they thought described them. We gleaned most of them from their website. After we went in and we looked at what their customer does, we read some of their proposals, some of their top people's resumes, we actually came up with a list closer to 90 words. So it's really important for you to first off say what you do. And I'm not looking for buzzwords, that are out there. Give me the skills of your people and the core technical competencies. Even if you resell a solution, say whether it's Palo Alto Networks, Proofpoint, Cisco, whether you're Microsoft, you can incorporate those quals into what your company does and look for opportunities. Now, when you pull up this budget sheet, and most of the time when I'm teaching courses, we will spend almost an hour on this. I'm going to show you this really quick, and I'll be happy to answer questions. But what you want to do, I'm on a Mac, so I use Command F. But you want to do, edit and find, and you're going to type in your keyword. And the idea is, when you're in that target agency's budget, it'll take you to wherever that word's mentioned for what your company does. Now, there's a couple pockets of money that I need you all to be real careful to. And these are where you start really learning how to read the tea leaves and find the smart hanging fruit. Notice on your screen, column P has something called D&E. For the 2017 budget. This is in millions, okay? This is the new money flooding into a program. So budgets are made up of two dollar amounts. One is called O&M, or steady state money. That's the money that's already there for an existing program. It's the lights, it's the people, it's the technology. It's already budgeted. D&E is new money flooding into a program. Now, the golden ticket to for you Willy Wonka fans is if you find an opportunity where there's no prior year spending and it's all DME money. That means it's a brand spanking new program. The other trend you want to look for, you might see a program where there's consistent growth each year, 3.1 million, 3.3, and then all of a sudden it has a DME of like 5 to 6 million. That means whatever this program is having such a growth that they're going to need help and resources. And I'm going to teach you a little bit more how to find that. But your first goal is start looking at the numbers. Now, there's some additional intelligence that you have to acquire. I'm going to show you an example of this in a little bit in the presentation. But for every budget line item, for major initiatives, government will put together what's called an Exhibit 300. It's Form 300A and B. This is the business case. This is some of my favorite reading in government. Literally, you will learn what's working, what's not. You can learn who the program managers, and these are gold if you can get a hold of them. If you're not sure where to start, just Google Exhibit 300 and the name of the agency. You'll come to the business cases. You also want to know, is there an RFP associated with this, or is it in a contract that's in renewal years? We'll talk a little bit more how you find that. There's a big difference between if something is forecasted and it's budgeted. Let me say this to you all. When your BD people are coming up for you with deals to go after this next coming year, ask them the question, is it funded? I watched a lot of people make massive mistakes chasing something that's forecasted as opposed to congressionally funded. It's very important also to learn your points of contact. I've put some other intelligent resources on here. FedBizOp is good. If you're not familiar with the Federal Procurement Data System, it is an awesome, awesome repository of government contracts. You can learn how money's getting spent, what contracts, and where. Excellent tool. I go into details in it in my book, How to Use It. Now, let's just take a pause for a minute. A lot of information coming at us this last 8 minutes. So you're going to go into the budget. You're going to make a key list of what you do, and you're going to start identifying deals on a spreadsheet, highlight them in yellow of what you do. Now, we ultimately have to take this, and we have to make something called a run rate or a sales pipeline, because We're going to take this research and we're going to go after these deals. So I want to talk to you a little bit. What's really important to pay attention to is you eventually are going to need to weight deals. You're going to need to put things into a priority 1, 2, or 3. I can talk a little bit more in the Q&A how to do that, but just make your own system. You want to make sure you have enough time to market it, that you are qualified to do it, and it fits a risk. If you are a 25-person company that does about $3 to $5 million a year, the government won't award you a $100 million deal. They're going to look at the risk of your company infrastructure, and there's a certain size deal you should go after. The other thing too, when Rob and I were putting this presentation together, he's put some real useful things, from a proposal BD standpoint. What's the revenue to be acquired? Just because it's a $100 million deal or a $1 million deal, that doesn't mean that's the value that goes to your company. You may have a part of it as software developers, systems integrators. You need to be mindful of the skills that you're going to need to have to do this, as well as the technologies to do it. So again, step 1, know your customer well, understand where their funding is, and make a strategy after you get to know them of how to take the research, put it in a sales pipeline, and move forward. Now, we're going to talk about how you map your target agency. As I mentioned to you all too, I'm just not a consultant that does theories. I roll up my arms and I do lead gen with my clients. I make calls. This is going to shock everyone out there in the virtual land, but I actually get objections and have people say they don't want to talk to me. I know it's hard to believe, but it happens, and we're going to talk to you a little bit about how to go around those things. You've got to be very smart, very intelligent when you begin to go after people. You need to know who's who. You need to be mindful. We're getting a little bit of reverb on the line. If you all could make sure your lines are muted there a little bit. You need to be aware of any political mandates. All of us right now are watching what's going on in the country as President Obama's second term ends. We could either have a Trump or Clinton presidency. And although the federal budget's set, it begins on October 1, they could have mandates and changes in policy that will absolutely impact what's going on in our departments. I want to talk to you about creating a call plan. And we're going to look at a single BLI. And forgive me when I talk in acronyms. I actually went to acronym school as a young guy. But budget line items is the acronym. And so how do you all take one of these budget line items, how do you line it up to actually go and pick up the telephone and call someone? So we're going to look at that. I want you to keep in mind that if you can't figure out whom to call, think about this. Every investment in the government goes through something called Capital Planning, Investment, and Control, or CIPIC. Within that process, the government has an IRB, Information Review Board. You might see it in some agencies as a strategy committee, but typically no government person makes a single decision to award. It's a group of people. So you're going to have to look at program, COTARs, people that actually implement the technology. As a young business development person, many times I was talking with my competitors as well as teaming partners to see what I could learn, because I had to debate whether I was going to prime or sub. So there's a lot that goes into a call plan. You're just not going to call up the CIO or CISO or CTO and go, hey, there's a strategy to it, and you've got to think through it. Now, I put together just a quick couple headers for you to think about. When you're looking at that huge spreadsheet, and keep in mind, I think the federal IT budget has columns A through X on it, so that's at least 23 numbers. You're going to add in these additional ones, but at the end of the day, when you go pick up the phone to call someone, and you want to know what their department and mission and goals are, I'm going to tell you why in a second. You want to have an understanding of the budget line item and how much funding's there. What's the steady state, what's the D&E, and what's the value to your company. You want to have a clear understanding of what your unique selling proposition, that's USP. You want to understand, is there an RFP associated, or is it forecasted? Where is it? You want to know the value of the deal and the value to your company. It's very important to have a strategy of why this is going to be important to you. I work with companies that have wonderful commercial calls, and I've taught them how you leverage that in if you don't have government past performance. If we have time at the end of the event, I'm going to share with you all a story of a Canadian company I work with. The 300s are your best friends. Love them, get to know them, read them on any area you're targeting. They're going to tell you a lot of information. Um, Understand the playing field. If this is an existing incumbent, you need to have an understanding who they are. Look if there's been an audit done to them. If you are a small business, 8A, veteran-owned, keep in mind the goal when the small business program came in act through President Nixon way back when was to make sure that new guys got a fair shake. So, the idea is that you keep a small business in there forever. So if there's a small business in there and we want to talk about how you make a play, you might have to do some real intelligence in the FPDS and make a case that it's time for a new company to take over. There's a lot of other information you can glean from government audit reports, GAO, OIG, and the news to have a sense what's going on. At the end of the day, you want to have a call plan. Now, let me put this into reality for you. I'm calling a chief information officer at the Department of Justice. I get on the, I catch him in his office. I tend to do my calls late at night because that's when busy people are catching up. And I say to him, this is James Baker. I understand you all have this budget line item that does this and it's been funded. And he might say, well, we don't need you, Baker. And I say, well, sir, help me, or ma'am, help me understand. You have this department mission and mandate. You have close to 500 million in DME coming in. And from the research that I've done and reading the business cases, you all are missing this. And what I'd just like to do is come in and show you how we do that. I'm going to send your scheduler over tomorrow, a calendar invite. We'll come down and do a quick meeting and shows you. I get more meetings that way, but like I said, you're going to hit objections. Don't get upset. Smart people ask great questions. And keep in mind, government has a lot of people calling them. So we're going to take a pause. I want to be mindful of the time. We're about halfway through the presentation right now, so let's just recap before Rob takes over. Step one, get a hold of that budget. Understand your target agency. Step two, take the research and weight the deals and move into a call plan where you can begin to actually go after and hunt, capture, and win on this. It's now my pleasure to turn things over to Rob Polster. Like I mentioned to you all here earlier, I've brought Rob into many of my accounts. He and I have worked jointly on things, and he's a brilliant strategist, and I think you're going to find his information riveting. Rob. Hey, Rob, can you hear me okay?
Sorry about that, Jimmy. I muted my microphone before and I forgot all about it.
No,
so,
Rob.
so now what we want to do is we want to motivate the customer to want to talk to you. And so one thing that we're going to do is we're going to help you to differentiate your company. Now, you see, what a lot of companies do is they focus exclusively on the technical requirements that they fulfill. They describe their activities in addressing those requirements. But the key to differentiating yourself is to find the underlying problem that you solve. Now, let me get more specific about that. First, what are these underlying problems? It has to do with risk. Government executives are generally concerned with the risks that they face. Each government executive has one or more missions that they have to fulfill, and there are risks associated with those missions. And so the question is, what risk do you mitigate, do your services mitigate for government executives? Now let's go through an example to see what that looks like. Take, for example, the Social Security Administration, and imagine that there's a call center there where you've got maybe thousands of customer service representatives who take calls from citizens who have questions about their Social Security benefits. And these customer service reps have to access lots of IT systems in order to pull up the information. Now, when those IT systems start to fail, then callers don't get the answers that they're seeking. And when citizens don't get the answers that they're seeking from the Social Security Administration, they start to complain. And well, to whom do they complain? They complain to their congressman. And what happens when the congressmen hear about that? Well, they decide to hold some hearings. And then they bring this executive in to answer some questions with his boss. And so this executive in charge of the call center starts to get a headache because of these IT system problems that he's been having. Okay, now suppose this executive, to address this problem, hires an IT service desk company. And suppose they do an especially good job of managing all these IT systems, helping the executive avoid problems, and they warn him about emerging trouble spots. So we can go to the next slide here. So the IT service desk company provides these advanced warning services, and so the result is that it provides him with the visibility and insight that he needs to maintain control of his operation so that citizens don't complain, so that Congress doesn't call him, and he doesn't have to go answer tough questions with his boss. Okay, so what kind of opportunity does this create for you? Well, it allows you to redefine what your company is all about. And so whereas before you might have described your company as an IT service desk company, describing the activity that you do, instead now you begin to describe yourself in terms of the results that you deliver. And so now you're a company that enhances government executive control of complex IT operations. And so this becomes not just something on a PowerPoint slide. This goes on your website. It becomes your whole definition of who you are as a company. You are all about helping government executives control complex IT operations. And having
Rob,
a
I want to
yeah,
make a point here that I think is just so vital to everyone listening. Keep in mind, Rob and I have implemented this and helped clients win business using this strategy. We never talked about their size, their quals. We talked about how we help them fix something. And it's critical for you all to understand. You need to how to do a business case to someone, how you show a return on investment, how you actually go in. And sometimes, before you can get ready to sell to government, you need to go in and validate your process to them. I'm thinking about a deal I did with the B-1 bombers, where I actually had to go out to 4 Air Force bases, hear what their feedback was, why they liked, disliked what I was saying, and then from there, I was able to take that information and go present it to management of why this was good. So sometimes you've got to get buy-in. But the point I'm trying to make here, Rob's not going, we're an 8A with, $3.5 million a year located in Northern Virginia, and we work for, DOE, DOJ. No, we're saying we're offering you a solution. You're showing an intelligence, and that's what a lot of people are looking for. They're looking for folks to come in and show them how I improve a process, how you keep me off the front page of the Washington Post, and how you can do something better.
that's exactly right, Jimmy. Yeah, and that's true. Nobody does it this way. And by focusing on the results that you deliver and developing a value proposition around that, you'll be able to differentiate yourself in a way that will differentiate yourself. All right. So the question is, how do you develop that unique value proposition for your own company? And so the way to do that, the way to get at that, is take a hard look at the risks that you mitigate for your customers. And a way to get at that is to ask yourself another question, which is, what would go wrong for my customer if we did not do our job well? How would things go awry for them, and what would be the impact on their lives, on their careers, on their mission, and so forth? So that's a key takeaway right there. All right, so what we've done here is we've gone through the first three steps in the impact business development process. You know, once you've developed that differentiating factor, the next thing is to develop your story, develop a clear value proposition, take certain steps to make sure your story gets heard by the right people, and then you get that story into a proposal that really resonates and speaks to the government executive's concerns. Then after you win your contracts, then you use this very similar kind of strategy to keep on winning recompetes, and we'll talk about that as well. And then once you've got a number of contracts under your belt, you begin to build a brand position, because this value proposition that you have gives rise to the promise of what you deliver, and that's what your brand stands for. And you have marketing communications and branding that will communicate these things. But we'll get into that in future webinars.
Well, and Rob, you know, one thing I want everyone listening in to realize is that the research is the beginning, the executing into stories. I do a great deal of branding audits for clients. I just got doing one for a defense contractor where I interviewed their customers and employees. And one of the things that you've got to be really mindful, and this I'm talking to all you presidents and vice presidents, sometimes you might set a mission and mandate saying this is who we are and this is what you're doing. However, you've never actually validated that your customer sees you that way. And then what happens is employees will take key of that and they'll say this is what we are. And one of the most dangerous things that happens is if you don't validate who you are in the market. Most of the times when I do these kinds of exercises for people, I come back with huge reveals and generally changes your strategy. So you're able to streamline the selling and marketing with a clear understanding of how the customer sees you. It is revolutionary. All right, we are at that time of the presentation where we want to hear from you, the audience. We've had several questions come in online, and we're going to take time to answer them all. One of the first questions I think that we got, Rob, and I'd like to do this, so we had one just came in. Will I be forwarding a copy of the PowerPoint? Yes, I will. We will send you an on-demand link that's coming out. Hold on one second, Rob. We're getting a question here. On differentiation in the small business program. So, Rob, can we talk a little bit about that? Like, you know, all the 8A, SDB type things, and is that a differentiation?
Well, no, being 8A certainly isn't a differentiator. The way you differentiate yourself is that you focus on the results that you deliver. And as I mentioned earlier, when you get the slides, you can see those questions I put in. The key question that you want to ask yourself is, what would go wrong for my customer if we didn't do our job well? And you have to play that through. You know, in the Social Security IT service desk example, if that IT service desk didn't do its job well, then the IT systems would break down, citizens would start to complain, and their customer would start to get complaints from Congress, and there would be consequences for him. So you have to think through those consequences of what can go wrong if your services were not delivered well.
Thanks, Rob. And again, everyone listening in, kindly, if you have a question for us, just go ahead and submit that through the dashboard and we'll answer it. We're going to go now. These are questions that came in through registration over the last couple of weeks. And this first one, I think, is a really great one. Rob, I know both you and I have an opinion on this, but why don't you go ahead and take first shot at this first question. Overcoming the problem of insufficient, relevant relationship, past performance calls. Rob, go ahead and...
Well, my perspective on this question is that in a way, it's sort of the wrong question, because it presupposes that what we're doing is we've identified an RFP, and but we don't quite have all the right past performance lined up to be the best candidate for it. what we're proposing is a completely different approach, where you begin with the capabilities that you do have, and you find opportunities that are just right for you, and you shape opportunities using the strengths that you have.
You know, I agree with you. One of the things I'm going to tell you all a quick story. I was working with a Canadian software company, and they had commercial references, and they were trying to penetrate the Department of Homeland Security. So did all this research for them. We spent time working with them. The day of the meeting with Homeland Security, my client had flown in, as did I, with great cost to be in Washington, D.C. We were sitting in Union Station, and we were about to go meet with the CIO. My phone rings, and I'm not known for having a soft voice, and it was Homeland Security. And everyone out there, I know you can guess what they were doing. It was the CIOs canceling the call, and you know we all know government likes to cancel 5-10 minutes before you're set to meet with them. So anyway, I told the scheduler, I said, my client's flown in at great cost. Please write this sentence on a piece of paper. We will wait around till late evening. We'll walk her to her car, but we need to meet with her. So 10-15 minutes goes by. My client's sitting there. My phone call rings back. She says, Baker, she will meet with you. She's triple booked, but come now. So my client and I, we had prepared a presentation. Okay, keep in mind, they have no Department of Homeland Security calls. We scrapped our well done presentation. I looked at this gentleman and I said, I go, you got this? We have 3 minutes, she gave us. We walk in. The CIO looks at my client and she goes, you have one hell of a consultant to even get in here. Go, you got 3 minutes. My client stands there. He looks at an enterprise network map on our wall. He takes his finger, he points it in the middle, and he says, we're doing this, and he named the 2 commercial companies. This is the efficiency, this is how we've saved them money, and this is what we can do for your process here. We walked out an hour later with an opportunity in hand through a large integrator that the CIO said, go to, tell them to add you on this project. But it just happened. So again, what I want you all to think about is if you have a solution and you can show commercial, remember, the government's made up of 15 to 30 vertical markets. The government's a big provider of healthcare. They do logistics, hospitals, transportation, you name it. So think in terms of that, of a process, a vertical that you help. All right, next question. This actually came in a couple times, and I get this asked a lot. I reference it in the book, but what are the best sources for bid information? The best source is you. Here's the deal. There are a lot of procurement systems out there. My opinion over the years is, you know, they all kind of do about the same thing. At best, I think they're about 60% accurate. You have to keep in mind, they're calling in to program people, and they're asking them, is this going to come up for recompete? What's the time? Typically, these systems will focus on their larger customer and the deals they want. The best source of bid information is you, understanding if a deal's really funded or not. And like I said, you know, there's a handful of them around the Beltway that you can look at. I've done some speaking with Jamie Bratton's group with EasyGov. You know, obviously Deltec Input is one of the leaders. Smart Procure is out there. You know, GovBiz, there's a whole bunch of things. There's, you know, FBO that the government gives. But I will tell you, you have to understand, in the government world, information only comes from a couple places. It's the budget, it's FBO, and FPDS. So if you know those things, you're probably the best source. Rob, did you want to chime in on that?
Well, that's absolutely right, Jimmy. But I think the point is that the authoritative source for where the funding is the federal budget. And so Jimmy's process for for analyzing the federal budget and finding the opportunities that are right for you is the best choice. These other sources, subscription databases, they tell you about contracts that were historically awarded and might be re-awarded again in the future, and they pull off opportunities that have been they found in FBO and so forth. you are much better off working with a process like Jimmy described, where you analyze the federal budget and you dig out the opportunities from there.
Good question. Let's go to this next one. Now, this is a great question, and I know Rob and I both have a question. How can I differentiate my company with so much competition? So, I worked for two legendary BD people in Tyson's Corner, Virginia. I worked for two gentlemen that taught me more than I ever could want to know about this marketplace. And one of the things they would make me do every Monday morning is I had to present to them a business case for our clients. I worked for a consulting firm of how we were going to differentiate them. One of the big issues that we had, it was never about the company, their size, and who they were. It was the problems we were going to solve. And I remember those Monday morning meetings. They were grueling, they were hard, but it got me into a mindset where I was able to present to government and show them how we can differentiate. Let me share a quick story, then I want to let Rob answer this. I was speaking for the Small Business Administration in Las Vegas, and I was sharing with the audience much of the information that you all are hearing today. So at the end of my class, I said, does anyone have any questions? And this uh, elderly gray-haired woman raised her hand, and she said, I have a question. I'm here to audit your class from the government. Now, we don't like the words government and audit. They just kind of give you a oof kind of feeling. So this woman went on to say to the large audience I was speaking to, if you do half of the stuff that this guy says, and you would come to us understanding our language, our words, and legitimately have a sincerity in solving our problems, we'd be far more interested in meeting with you. And like I said, if you can solve a problem, are there a lot of companies that do security? Yeah. Are there a lot of companies that do cloud computing? For sure. But how do you differentiate it? It's that ability to show how you solve a problem. As a matter of fact, section, I believe it's 15 of the Federal Acquisition Regulations talks about an unsolicited proposal. And I will tell you, one of the things I try to work with clients on is I don't want to go and propose deals where everyone else is bidding on it. I like to do a lot of my stuff either through unsolicited or GSA, and I can share with you story after story, offline where we've been able to do that. So that's my take on differentiating. I know, with Rob and the Impact BD and a lot of the writing, there's a way to differentiate there. Rob, kindly comment on this one.
You're exactly right, Jimmy. I guess just simply stated, the key is instead of talking about the services that you conduct, to talk about the results that you deliver. And the challenge sometimes is fully understanding what those results are. And if you use some of my material, or we can help you tease out what those results are, that will differentiate you.
Yeah, as a like I mentioned to everyone here, I came up in the ranks after graduating from Maryland. I did what a lot of people do. I got a job with somebody that sold something to government, and one of the best things I can tell you to do when you say claims at the government, use the word "so what" behind it. So what? So what? And it really helps you get your differentiator down. And I know this is hard and brutal, but you know, it's really important that you all understand that there's a study out of UCLA with Dr. Albert Moravian. In 14 seconds, people make over 35 conscious and unconscious impressions about you and what you're communicating to them. And you would be surprised, most of it's done through your sound and images and words. And so you've got to be really mindful when you go to differentiate. The other thing too, look at your competition. Have you read their 10K reports? Have you looked at any audits that they've done? In any federal deal, my belief is this: there's only one or two companies really qualified for it. So you may and sometimes have to have your marketing and your proposal ghost why you're better. You may have to market outside the proposal to show differentiation. Next question we'll go to, and again, we've got about 10 more minutes, so we're getting a few more questions coming in that we'll try to get to. Please use your dashboard and ask us those questions. What do you mean about DME dollars? Okay, that's a great question. DME, Development, Modernization, and Enhancement, is new money that pours into a program. So take a program, any program. You could have $500,000 that goes into it for what they call steady state or operations and maintenance, okay? That's money that's already allocated that's going into it. The DME is new funding that goes into it. So one of the things that I like to look at when I'm chasing deals, and one of the questions that I ask when I'm working with clients is, well, what's the DME going for? Is it a new program? If there's an incumbent, do they need help to get that? What is happening with this? Be very mindful of that. It's a really important too. All right, this is a great question. I don't have a lot of relationships in government. Rob, I'm going to take first crack at that. And here's the deal with that. I know a lot of people in government have been running around the Beltway, but let me just say this to you. Process always supersedes relationships. One of the mistakes that can happen to companies is they hire some person that can do the DC Beltway talk, or maybe they're in a major GSA city, and I know, General Half Track here and blah, 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 blah. That's all good. Relationships do help you get in the door, but the reality is government people, I track them, I'm connected to a bunch of them on LinkedIn, they move jobs all the time, and someone that's in a place is going to move. So you need to have a process that supersedes that. Relationships are great. They take time, but your process should always supersede that. Rob, I didn't know if you wanted to comment on that.
Well, a couple things here. First of all, people buy from people who can solve their problems. And if you have a solution that a government executive needs, you will ultimately get in. But you might not get in right away, because government executives are very hard to connect with. They are surrounded by administrative people, and you call up and tell them you've got a great solution, and they'll likely send you to contracting. What you have to do, you need a strategy for accessing those people. And government executives in general have trusted inside advisors. And what you need is to connect with a business developer who is well connected in the network of relationships in Washington, who can identify who that executive's trusted advisors are, and who can arrange to get the story told to the right person, who will get it to the executive, so that that executive will invite you in. And that's really an advanced strategy that we offer for helping.
I'll give you a quick example on that. A few years ago, I was working with a client that wanted to penetrate Veterans Affairs, and so that they didn't have a lot of VA experience. So we began putting together who the organization was, and we started looking. We found this one very high up doctor that was out on Yammer, and he was referencing a book called Medicine in Denial, and talking about some of the theories in it and why government needed it. So this company I was working with, they did mobile applications in the healthcare space. They're a brilliant company. So I went out to Amazon, I ordered the book, I read it, and I sent this doctor high up at VA scheduler an email. And I think it was like page 232 of Medicine Denial, we can help you here. We had a whiteboard virtual session with him, because there's a lot of people that he wanted on this out of the country. We were able to move forward with something. So like I said, if you don't have a relationship, give them a really good reason to talk to you, and they will. Now, this next company, is your company's size a risk? It all depends. I mean, if you're smaller, you can't go after a larger deal because the government's going to say it's too big for you. So, in that case, it can be a risk. However, if you're able to show a solution to a problem and you're a smart technology company, sometimes that efficiency and the ability to work with a really small, fast, quick, sharp technical company is a value. It's not a risk. So, like I said, it all depends there. All right, we've got time for one or two more questions. Someone asked, how do Rob and I work with tech companies? Well, it's Rob, why don't you go ahead and go first?
Sure. Well, what we're all about is really helping companies to implement the impact business development process. So ultimately, what our objective is to get you to the point where you can do this on your own. But we help you jumpstart the process. will help you to identify an agency where you want to focus your effort, research, develop a set of pipeline opportunities, will help you to define your value proposition, develop your story that supports it, and so forth. And in future webinars, we'll go through the other steps in the impact business development process, but we'll explain how we are able to do all those things.
Yeah. Rob and I consult on many accounts together where I'll go in and do the budget research and provide him all the information, and then he will take that data and turn it into their stories. There is so much misinformation out there about who the government decision maker is, and I just asked this out to everyone. Do you know what the average age of a government person is? It's 54. It's a baby boomer. And so one of the things that you need to realize when you're communicating with government, a baby boomer, I'm Generation X, that's the generation ahead of me, is they want to be informed. They want to read something that makes sense. And what we're seeing too is a lot of the baby boom generation, there's a lot of research out there that shows us they're going to YouTube and websites and downloading white papers. So when Rob and I do research, we try to create tactical information. You can put that. What I do outside of that is I kind of do two things. I live in the world of the proverbial rubber that hits the road. And so I try to make really tactical campaigns for clients where I do playbooks. I help them with lead generation, business development. I help them with marketing events. And then I have the Public Sector Technology Exchange, which is a forum where we have different sponsors that come in and we talk about the issues of that. And then I do training on the book. I just got done a 3-hour virtual training class for a company about, last month on this space that wanted to come into it. There's a lot more detail that goes into it. So, you know, both of us, like we said, we work with companies in a variety of ways. At the end of the day, it's to make sure that your unique selling proposition resonates. And like I said, the most revealing exercise that I've done is when I go and interview a client's customers and ask them about 25 different questions about that. And I got to tell you, I see a lot of marketing people and a lot of salespeople and a lot of presidents that are missing the mark on their messaging. They don't understand their customer well. They've said buzzwords and they put them out there, and that's getting rammed at their target market. And the target market is going, hey, that's not what I really need from you. That's not how I see you. So again, important to know. We are going to go ahead and if there aren't any more questions, I'm going to leave the dashboard open for a minute. I want to thank our audience. We've had everyone stay with us for this entire hour. I found the discussion riveting. One of the things I was going to mention to you, outside of this, there's a couple things for you all, and I'm going to have our contact information up here, but take a moment and look at Rob's paper. I encourage you to do it. If you haven't had an opportunity to read my book, How to Win Business from the Government, the reviews on Amazon and online, but if you order a copy before September 1st, we'll do a 30-minute call where we talk about your questions about the book and strategy for a particular department you're going after. If you'd like to contact Rob or myself, there's our information on the screen. Please feel free to reach out to us outside of the webinar. On behalf of my colleague, Dr. Robert Holster, I want to thank you all for attending Winning Strategies for the 2017 Federal Technology Marketplace. I'm James Baker. Make it a great day.
Thank you all.